Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Thompson Treks webinar, What Does It Take to Summit Kilimanjaro? My name is Angela Woods, and I'm the Manager of Guest Services here at Thompson. I, along with our team of wonderful trip managers, work with Kilimanjaro trekkers almost every single day, helping them prepare for their own Kilimanjaro treks, working with them on everything from travel logistics to packing to training and so much more. I have had the privilege of trekking Kilimanjaro myself. Last year, I summited with my sister, so it was a very special trip for me. We were joined by 6 travelers from all across the United States and from Canada. We all started off as strangers. There they are, all from different backgrounds, different levels of fitness, different hiking experiences, different ages ranging from 30 to 60. And we were so thrilled to be able to share this wonderful experience together. It was sincerely one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. Enough about me. I am here with my colleague, Louis Crary. Louis, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself and share more about your background.
Thanks, Angela. My name's Louis. I'm one of the senior safari and Kilimanjaro consultants here at Thompson. I actually come from a animal academia background. I was under the shadow of Kilimanjaro for a long time doing research in the Serengeti. Now I get to help people get to Tanzania, and I jumped at the opportunity to climb Kilimanjaro. I went with my girlfriend, Elena, just a couple of months ago. I can still smell that summit. It was gorgeous. There we are above the cloud cover. I'm going to echo all the sentiments that Angela expressed. It was nothing short of transformative, and I'm so excited to talk to you guys today in the weeks and months to come when you call in about your own trip.
Great. So Louis and I will be talking with all of you about what we believe it takes to summit Kilimanjaro. We're going to focus on a few areas: motivation, preparation, and execution. Towards the end of this webinar, we will be opening it up to all of you for Q&A. Our colleague and fellow Kilimanjaro summiter herself, Carolyn, is on the line monitoring that Q&A chat. So please feel free to put any and all questions that you have about Kilimanjaro, Tanzania, Thompson Treks into that chat, and we'll get to as many of those questions as we can towards the end of today's session. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Louis, to get us started and tell us about the motivation it takes to get us to the top of this summit.
Absolutely. Yeah. So anybody who's listening to this webinar who's been considering Kilimanjaro, you're probably a pretty good candidate. I mean, taking a step back, anybody with a reasonable level of fitness can make it up this mountain, but that doesn't mean that it's a trip for everybody. You know, it's kind of self-selecting. I imagine that if you're here listening to us right now, looking at some of the imagery on the website, you know that you're the kind of person who's going to take your hard-earned dollars and what little time we have to use on ourselves to actually challenge yourself. You know, you're not picturing yourself necessarily always on a beach or on another vacation that's conventional, but rather you want to come down from something different than you went up. It's really important that if you're going to start preparing and then ultimately getting on the mountain and facing those obstacles, that you visualize what it is that you want to get out of this trip. You know, think about what that motivation is going to be. For Elena and me, my girlfriend, we were excited to share a goal in parallel to face the preparations together. We went up to the White Mountains. We're in New England, and we would be doing probably no shorter than 15 REI runs on Saturday before doing another mountain on Sunday, and it got us close together. We had an incredible time on that trip. Speaking specifically about the folks who are on my own recent Western Approach route, there was a father and son who were celebrating the son's graduation, and that was really special, sharing it with them on the top of the mountain. I still talk to all these folks afterwards in our text group. I just got off the phone earlier today about a couple in their 60s, and they'd climbed Mount Rainier 30 years previous, and they're excited to see if they still have the same resolve to do it again. And it seems from our phone conversations that they certainly do. But it's something that is so appealing for anyone who's mission oriented. You know, is this going to be something that commemorates a milestone in your life, or will it serve as that milestone? It's this giant, largest freestanding mountain in the world, the tallest mountain in Africa. It's just, even the name summons this mystique and this grandeur. And all you need to have, it's not going to be It's not going to be qualities like your gender or your age or even your trekking experience that are going to determine whether you can make it up there. It's going to be drive. So just think about what it is that's going to motivate you. What are you going to be holding on to in your mind's eye as you're looking at your feet and camp is inching closer and closer with each subsequent day? And if you can figure out what exactly that's going to be, give us a call, tell us about it, and then we can start looking at what route would be appropriate.
Great. Thanks, Louis. So switching gears to preparation. So Kilimanjaro does not require technical climbing skills. It doesn't require technical gear. You're really putting one foot in front of the other. But for many Thompson trekkers, this is their first high altitude trek, their first multi-day trek. For many, it's their first time camping in the outdoors. And while you're putting one foot in front of the other, you're doing that for probably at least a week and going through 5 different climate zones over varying terrain and going up to 19,341 feet. So the more that you can do to prepare yourself for the things that you can control, like your physical training, like gear, like knowing what to expect day to day, the better you're going to be prepared for all of those unknowns and all of the things that are outside of your control, like the weather while you're on the mountain or how your body is responding to altitude. So starting with physical preparation, you do need to be reasonably fit to trek Kilimanjaro. But when you sign up for this trek, you don't need to be an elite athlete. You don't need to be a bodybuilder or an ultra marathon runner. Absolutely not. That's not me. That's not Louis. We have many trekkers who let us know that they've never run a mile before signing up for this trek, or they're self-proclaimed couch potatoes. And then we do have folks on the other end of that spectrum who are elite athletes, and everyone in between. No matter who you are, where you're coming from, everyone does need to do some training, but that training is probably going to look a little different for each person. Most trekkers do start their training around 3 to 6 months prior to departure, and then they're increasing that intensity and focusing on more rigorous training around 2 to 3 months prior to departure. As mentioned, every training plan is going to look a little different, but it should include things like cardio and endurance training. Now, that doesn't need to mean running for miles and miles. I'm not a runner. I don't love running. My knees don't love running, but I got in my cardio and in my endurance training by doing things that I do enjoy, like spin classes and jumping rope and things that were getting my heart pumping and building that heart muscle. You also need to do some strength and stability training, conditioning all the muscles throughout your body to get you up that mountain, focusing a lot on your lower body. It's not going to feel like it in the moment, but lunges and squats are going to be some of your best friends going through all this training. And then you do want to focus on your core, and especially if you're carrying your own day pack, focusing on your upper body. Just a quick side note, you can hire a personal porter who can help with carrying your day pack and alleviating some of that weight that's on your upper body and your core. So that's just a nice little pro tip. But still, whether or not you have a porter, conditioning from head to toe, so you're feeling good. I also like to throw in mobility training. Personally, this was one of the most important pieces of my training because I do suffer from some knee pain from time to time, and I do have some tight hamstrings and tight calves that have led to plantar fasciitis. So I wanted to avoid all of that on the mountain, and I did a lot of stretching and strengthening the muscles all around my joints and felt really good on the mountain. Your training should also happen on varying terrain, so over rocks, over roots, going uphill and going downhill. We know not everyone has access to trails in mountains at higher elevation, but you can still get some good training and varying the terrain on relatively flat trails. And also, if you have a nearby college or high school, they probably have some good stadium steps that you can practice going up and down, and that's really going to help prepare you for the mountain. The last thing I'll say on physical preparation is that many of our trekkers do work with a personal trainer. We have the opportunity to work with a wonderful trainer, Marcus at Fit for Trips. We've been working with Marcus for many, many years. and he knows the Thompson routes, he knows Thompson trekkers, and he's able to provide a customized personal training plan that takes into account how much time our guests have, how much access they have to trails and to mountains, how far out they're training. And in addition to all of that, he's able to provide benchmarks and the accountability that you're going to need to stay consistent with this training week after week. So having that accountability buddy is going to be really helpful as you're going through your physical preparation. Now, moving on to mental preparation. I would argue that this is probably just as important as physical training when preparing for Mount Kilimanjaro. One of the ways that you can mentally prepare for Kilimanjaro is learning about what to expect on the mountain and then replicating as many of those scenarios as you can. For example, if I have anyone who tells me I'm doing this trek and I've never camped before, my recommendation is to go on a camping trip, even if it's just in your backyard, setting up a tent just, right behind your home, sleeping, in that tent, sleeping on a sleeping pad, sleeping in your sleeping bag, so that you're not doing this for the first time ever at 8,000 feet. I also recommend doing your training hikes in conditions that you might experience on the mountain. So, not just doing training hikes on beautiful bluebird sunshiny days, but trekking in the rain and windy conditions on, muddy trails, on rocky trails. That way, again, when you get to the mountain, you've done it all, you've experienced it all, and hopefully you'll have a beautiful day, just like we have in this background on Kilimanjaro, every single day that you're on that mountain. You should also review your route. So you will receive a map from your trip manager, and that map will give you an idea of what the days are going to look like. Every day that you're on the mountain, you're going to see the different elevation gain. You'll see the grades. You'll see the average number of trekking hours. You'll see the average number of miles you'll be trekking. And that's going to kind of put you in the mindset, on day one, you know what it's going to look like. On day 9, you know what it's going to look like. And then finally, on mental preparation, I recommend finding tools and strategies that are going to help build your mental endurance. These are going to be long days going up the mountain, long days going down the mountain. You might be in some, extreme weather conditions. You might not, feel too well at higher elevations. So, pre-trek nervousness on the trail, fears, negative thoughts, those are, going to come into your mind. That's not uncommon, but you can't let thoughts like that take over your mind and take over this experience. You really need to find things that are going to help keep you staying positive. Think back to what motivated you to do this in the first place and just remind yourself of that, day after day, step after step, breath after breath, and you will be able to see yourself at the top in no time. One of the things that I do to just get my mind off of all those negative thoughts and really to serve as a distraction if I'm just struggling on a trail is turn to music. Even on my hikes out here and while I was on the mountain, I had some song going on in my head, or I would make up my own songs. And the guides and the porters, they definitely know how connected we all are to music. And whenever things would get a little too quiet, or they could tell we were struggling, they would start serenading us up the mountain. And sometimes the songs were slower and melodic, and other times they were pumping us up and energizing us. But we learned a lot of Swahili songs. We sang to one another, and so there was a lot of John Denver and Bob Marley also we sang on the mountain. So anything that's going to take your mind off of those negative thoughts and just help to keep you positive all along the way is going to be really helpful. When I got back to camp, again, things are slowing down, your mind is racing. And so getting back into my tent, I had letters from my loved ones and from colleagues that I would read that had all sorts of inspiring and motivating messages. That's me there with one of my letters and my one of my favorite treats, chocolate covered pistachios that one of my wonderful colleagues gave me. So I had a little reward waiting for me at the end of every day. And then again, these letters to remind me, again, why I'm doing this wild thing in the first place and connecting me to the things at home that, would bring me comfort, the people at home that would bring me comfort. So really important to, have those things that are going to build that mental endurance throughout. And then finally, on preparation, gear. So gear for a trek like this can really make or break the trek. And we want you to have the best gear. So your trip manager will share a packing list with you that has, it's pretty extensive. There's a lot on that list, but it has everything that you should need for a 6-day trek or a 10-day trek going through 5 different climate zones. It should have everything that you need on the coldest days to keep you warm. And then on those warmest days, clothing that's going to keep you from overheating. There will be gear that's protecting you from the elements. And then every piece of gear should be practical. That said, you can have gear that's practical and also that's going to give you, some comfort. So one of my favorite pieces of gear was actually my camp shoes. they're right there, that last photo. They were practical, they were insulated, and they also had traction so I could walk around the camps comfortably. But they were also this fun kind of floral design, and they were cozy. And every time I saw those, I knew that the hardest part of my day was probably over. I could slip into those, stroll over to the dining tent and grab a nice hot mug full of ginger tea, and then could settle in for the evening and get ready for the adventures coming up the next day. So that's everything for preparation. I'll turn it back to you, Louis, to talk about this last piece of the puzzle, execution.
Thank you, Angela. So up until this point, we've been talking about what largely you need to bring to the table, right? We've been talking about you finding what that motivation is going to be, that drive, talking about the physical preparation that you'll need to do in anticipation of this trip, as well as the gear that, just practically speaking, you'll want to be confident throughout the trip. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I imagine a lot of you are here to hear about, which is what does Thompson Treks add to the equation? What is it that we're bringing in the execution that allows for the 98% summit success rate? And really comes down to just one word. It's people. The people who are involved on both sides of the Atlantic, but I'll speak very briefly about the trip manager responsibilities first, because it's going to come down to the work of Angela and her colleagues, and as well as the porters and the guides. So kind of these 3 different groups of people. So this Angela's presentation here, I think, is actually a really good insight into the kind of concierge service that you'll get when you call and you start planning this trip. You're going to have someone who's undoubtedly spent time in Tanzania, likely has climbed the Kilimanjaro themselves. They're not presiding over trips all over the world. We're specialized. We do one thing. So right away, you'll have that comfort. Your apprehension will be reduced, knowing that you're talking to someone who can speak authoritatively about the routes and the preparation and everything that we've been speaking about a little bit here today. But now fast forward to Tanzania. You're now in one of the most beautiful countries in the world. And you're getting prepared for an intimidating but very exciting trip. And it all is made possible because of men and women, like you're seeing in the screen there, the porters. The porters what allow for this entire almost military-like operation to succeed. It is hyper specialized. These guys are the most experienced in the business. They're strong, they're prepared, and they know how to anticipate any of the issues or concerns those of the guests. Thompson Safaris is a founding member of the Kilimanjaro Porters Assistance Project. That's a watchdog organization, a trade group that looks over these porters and ensures that they are outfitted in the same level of technical gear that you will be. You can see them wearing some of those jackets there. KPAP, those are initials that you want to keep in the back of your mind when you're looking around at different operators. It ensures not only that they have the correct gear that I was just mentioning, but also that they're compensated fairly and they're not being asked to perform or to carry too much weight. Unfortunately, especially as the industry has become increasingly saturated, there's a lot of exploitation on the mountain. And not only is it the ethical thing to pursue a company that is a member of the Kilimanjaro Porters Assistance Project, but it's also a matter of safety. You don't want someone at 19,000 feet that you're depending on to erect your tent or to break down the tent behind you in sandals among the rocks and ice. You want someone who can be focused exactly on just your and your group's success, and is wearing anything but the best possible gear. On to that point, you also want to make sure that they're getting a fair compensation package so that they're going to be able to be excited, enthused, and know that they're going to be able to go back to their family with fair compensation for the incredible work that they do over the course of this trip. Moving on from the porters, I'll speak to the guides a little bit. The guides are going to be at a ratio of about one for every 2 to 3 trekkers on a Thompson trek. They are all Wilderness First Responder certified. That is the gold standard when it comes to medical authority on the mountain. Steer clear of any operator who has anything but Wilderness First Responder certified guides. Where Thompson Treks diverges from the crowd a little bit is that every single one of these guides is going to be Wilderness First Responder certified. Oftentimes, if you're doing your research and you're looking at websites, companies can be a little bit misleading about the level of certification among their guides. They may say they're certified, but be a little bit vague or ambiguous about exactly what certification they're talking about. What you're looking for is this WFR, just like you're looking for KPAP, KPAP for the porters, you're looking for Wilderness First Responder for the guides. And what's more is you would ideally have a Wilderness First Responder certified guide or certification for each one of the guides on your trip. So with Thompson Treks, you don't have to worry about that. That's always going to be the case. You'll have the same level of qualifications for any one of the guides who's on your trip. The reason that's important is if you go to one of the conventional or a budget operator and only one of the guides is Wilderness First Responder certified, maybe the lead guide, if you're at about 14, 15,000 feet and someone twists an ankle, suddenly you have a difficult decision to make, right? Now we're in a situation where we're either having the only truly qualified guide doing that emergency descent with that guest, or going ahead with the rest of the group. And then that person in this vulnerable state is now with someone who doesn't have those qualifications. So that's, if you're looking at a point of distinction between Thompson Treks and other companies, consider that Kilimanjaro Porters Assistance Project membership, and also consider the Wilderness First Responder certification and the ratio of a guide for every 2 to 3 trekkers. This is going to allow for you to have that personal touch, not just have this guide who maybe you see at meal times, is helping the porters organize the camp space, but someone who actually has time for a sincere connection with you. I mean, that is the name of the game. When I say it's about people, it's not just about the qualities and the abilities that they bring, the technical skill, how they can almost anticipate the weather and you can feel safe with. It's also their ability to speak with folks and as ambassadors to their country and understand, our differences, our Western idiosyncrasies, even some at times apprehension or discomfort. I mean, remember that on top of this big physical challenge that you're going to embark on, it's also, you're going to a new country. Everything's different. The smells are different. The foods are often different. And so part of the job of these guides and why we want to selfishly take advantage of their 200, 300 summits is there is much social engineers and experienced at working with us as they are at working on the mountain. And that brings people a lot of comfort. You might think that after, it's funny, after 200, 300 summits, some of these guides might be jaded or hardened. But my girlfriend, Elena, and I were on our safari following our trek, which incidentally, I would recommend to anybody. You're going to the best animal viewing in the world. Please, there's no better way to celebrate your achievement than spending a few days in the Serengeti. But anyway, we were sitting in this Land Rover, bouncing across the savannah, and we were thinking about our guide Gabriel and how it was just humbling that someone with so much authority and that we all looked up to and was stoic at times when we saw him looking out at the horizon would also just dote on us hand and foot. I mean, he would be watching me when I'm eating my breakfast, making sure that I finish my porridge so I have the water content I need to help mitigate the chances of altitude sickness. If someone was coughing in the middle of the night, the next sound you heard was Gabriel's voice saying, "Hello, how are you?" Opening their tent and making sure that they're feeling okay, bringing them electrolytes if they need it, ensuring that they're drinking enough water. So be prepared to regress a little bit into a childhood state, because they will be taking care of you, their guide, your parent, but that's what you're paying for. Someone whose job is to get you up there safely and confidently. You don't just want to experience Kilimanjaro. You want to enjoy it, right? This is a life-changing event, and we're so excited that you're taking the first step, so to speak, by attending this webinar, talking to us a little bit about what's involved, and I'm excited to actually get on the phone and talk about when you want to do this yourself.
Great. Thanks so much, Lewis. So hopefully we have tons of questions from all of you. We're ready to answer those questions. So we'll throw it over to our colleague, Carolyn, to facilitate this next portion.
Thank you both. That was so great. We do have a lot of questions here, so we will just dive right in and get started. First one is, what happens if I get altitude sickness?
I can take that one. So altitude sickness does happen. It's not uncommon. Oftentimes it's going to be your mild symptoms of altitude sickness, like a slight headache or some nausea. But for anything that's more severe, safety is going to be the guide's number one priority. And they're looking at altitude sickness and anything else that comes up in a holistic way. So every day from the moment you're meeting them, they're checking in to see how you are. They're checking your oxygen saturation. They're checking your heart rate. Every single day, they're asking you questions, so that in case you have a day where your oxygen saturation might be a little lower, heart rate might be a little higher, they're also checking in to see, well, how much water did you drink today? How much sleep did you get last night? How much porridge did you eat this morning? And so they don't take early descents because of things like altitude sickness lightly. We, of course, want everyone to get to the summit, but as mentioned, safety is going to be the number one concern. So if you do need to go down because of altitude sickness, sometimes trekkers can just go down to the very next camp and they're already starting to feel better. Sometimes they might need to go all the way back down to town to get medical care. It's always going to be a case-by-case situation. What I like to tell our travelers is that you can be reassured that whatever happens, whenever it happens, you're going to be in some of the best hands on this mountain. You'll be with the Thompson team on the mountain. If you do need any assistance once you're off the mountain, there's the Thompson team in Arusha who can assist. So whatever comes up, our top priority is your safety and your health. And hopefully it doesn't come up, but we've seen it, and we know that the guides know what to look for and how to help.
Thank you, Angela. All right, just going right through here. Why is Thompson so much more expensive than other companies out there?
I'm happy to speak to that, and I will speak to it with pride. It really comes down to just a few key things, and all of this is done with this underlying goal of how many times are you going to attempt to climb the highest mountain in Africa? Probably once. So if there's we're not going to take opportunities to cut corners here. We're going to throw the kitchen sink at it. I mean, that's genuinely what we believe, and informs all of our preparation for getting you up the mountain. When I talk about a guide, and so let's break it down into a few things. Let's start with the guides. Like I say, there's going to be a guide for every 2 to 3 trekkers. That's a lot of folks, but every time you have that extra minute to confide in someone who can actually keep their eye on you, those little things are going to contribute to having a more customized plan, someone who knows when you're looking like you're healthy, maybe can spot signs of altitude sickness because they've been keeping pace with you before even you do. I mean, that happened on our trek with Philomena. She's incredible, and she could spot someone feeling a little bit dizzy before they could even come to terms with it themselves. That's not going to be possible if there's a group of 25 trekkers with just a couple of guides. You really need that one-on-one ratio. It doesn't come cheap. It certainly doesn't, but we know that we've seen the numbers change. We've seen that 98% number be possible because of those types of decisions. Another, moving on from guides, the routes is a critical part of your summit success, and what candidly contributes to the premium that you're paying with Thompson Trek. So For example, a conventional Western approach, that's going to be a 6 days up, 2 days down, 2 days down route. We're talking about going to bed on the pre-summit day at 7 p.m., 8 p.m. And in theory, you sleep for a few hours. This is the conventional approach. And then you do your hardest push, 8, 9 hours of trekking starting at midnight with only a couple of hours, if you're lucky, under your belt. And then it's all by lamplight, and you get up to the summit, and then you'll come back down with probably the largest group of folks, because that'll be a bottleneck between people doing the popular Machame and that 8-day Lemosho route. With Thompson Treks, if you were doing the same trajectory, which is that Lemosho, you'd be pursuing a Western approach. That's 9 days. That's going to be 7 days up, 2 days down. That is going to cost money. That means we have to have porters and staff, the cooks, the waiters, the guides for that additional day. We have to outfit you for that day. We have to have the permits for that additional day. But it also means you have a full night's sleep before the hardest part of this mountain, when you may be feeling your weakest. Again, just another difference between how we're climbing up to that 97, that 98% summit success rate. And one of the biggest contributors, I would say, to our success is the option to get a personal porter. This is not something that's offered by everyone. In the case of Thompson Treks, I think it is one of the most valuable assets that we have on offer. It's usually, there's going to be this day pack, right? That the default is that you're carrying that day pack that Angela spoke to before. But you can be entirely unencumbered. If you've never done heavy backpacking before, you don't need to worry. You can just have a smile on your face and trekking poles in your hands, and hire the services of personal porter, someone who's worked with Thompson for a very long time, and they're going to be there to help you carry your gear, be your personal cheerleader, be looking out for you, be a resource, helping you find where you missed sunscreen on the top of your ears, and also be a source of sincere cultural exchange. It is, to me, one of the most gratifying things seeing guests say goodbye and thank their personal porters after spending 9 days with them on the mountain. So these are just 3 elements. There are many, and if you that are help diverge Thompson Treks approach or differentiate Thompson Treks approach versus the conventional operators out there. But the bottom line is, you get one shot at this, and it's not worth skimping on.
Thank you, Lewis. All right, next one up here, one of my favorite questions. What are the bathroom facilities like up there, especially while you are on the trail?
I can take that one. It's also one of my favorite questions, and it's one of my favorite questions because it was one of my top concerns as well, what the bathroom situation was. And I'm happy to say it was as great as it possibly can be when you're up at around 10,000 feet. So on a Thompson Trek, you get private portable toilet tents that are exclusive to Thompson Trekkers and to your group. Most groups, you'll have at least one, and some groups will have 2 or 3 toilet tents. They're all walk-in height. They're all serviced and cleaned multiple times a day. There's toilet paper, hand sanitizer. So, pretty comfortable accommodations when you're comparing them to the communal drop toilets on the mountain that we advise just steering clear of. When you're on the trail, you will need to use nature's restroom from time to time, especially if you're hydrating well. And so as long as you're letting your guide know or any of the porters know that you need to use the bathroom, they'll be able to find a secluded area that's going to give you some privacy, that's safe, where you can use a friendly bush or a friendly tree or a rock to give you some privacy while using the restroom on the trail. That's also where those lunges and squats are going to come in handy. But don't be shy about asking for a bathroom break. If you're asking for it, guaranteed someone else in your group is going to need either a bathroom break or just a break from trekking. So we make it as seamless as possible on the mountain.
Thank you, Angela. All right, next one here. Does Thompson use oxygen?
I will take that because you fell on the bathroom sword. So this will be a quick answer. No, Thompson Treks will not administer oxygen to help any trekkers get up to the top of Kilimanjaro. You do not need oxygen to get to that summit, and I would steer clear of any operator who advertises oxygen as a means, as a tool to get you up there. They are well aware that you're risking long-term pulmonary consequences if you're using oxygen to get to the top. It's not worth it. If you need oxygen to get to the top, then you shouldn't have been trekking Kilimanjaro in the first place. That being said, we're going to be carrying, the Thompson Trek porters will be carrying emergency oxygen with them all the way up the mountain. That is only in the case of an emergency descent. If someone is experiencing acute altitude sickness, then we may use, or the guide may opt to use those to help someone descend safely, but we're not going to use oxygen to get you to the top of the mountain.
Perfect. Thank you, Lewis. What gear do I need to bring myself?
That's a great question. I can jump in with that one. So Thompson does provide your sleeping tents. These are high quality, four-season mountaineering tents with a ground sheet and a ground pad. Everything else that you need to bring, you'll know about. As mentioned, your trip manager will share a packing list with you that's going to be pretty extensive. It's going to include things like your sleeping bag, your sleeping pad, your trekking poles, all of the layers you're going to be wearing on your person, your toiletries, and anything that you don't have. We do have a number of rental gear items that you can look into. So, for example, if you are coming to a Thompson Trek from Florida, you probably don't need to go out and buy a $300, 800 fill down puffy jacket when you can rent it from Thompson for $60. So anything that you aren't renting and that you don't already have, if you're purchasing gear, we're all here and available to help provide recommendations for that gear. We can give you some suggestions on what to ask if you are going to an REI or another sporting goods store. It is an extensive list, but as I mentioned, it's getting you through those 5 climate zones up the mountain, and we're here to help just make sense of that entire gear list.
Perfect. All right, moving right along. This one says, I am a vegetarian. Can that be accommodated?
Yes. I will. I'll speak to that from my own experience, and maybe I'll let Angela fill in some of the details because I will have a skewed perspective. I'm vegan myself, and my girlfriend is as well, and so we were just floored. In fact, humbled and embarrassed by the quality of the food compared to what we're cooking at home, despite the fact that there were gailing winds and it's just desolate rock and ravens. And they were putting together these 4-course meals for us on the side of a mountain that all met our very specific dietary restrictions. They put together an incredible, diverse set of food. I mean, dinner was always different. Breakfast and lunches. I mean, it was varied. It was nutritionally informed. It was exactly what we needed to get to the top of the mountain. And we find ourselves cooking some of this stuff now that we're back home. It was just a comfort and an added reassurance. In keeping with this theme of let's take all the guesswork out of this. Let's make it as easy for you as possible. We don't want you to be anxious about food or any of those other externalities. You should be just focusing on being positive and getting yourself to the mountain. So whether you're halal or kosher or vegan or vegetarian or low sodium, we've seen everything. But I guess to speak to some of the normies out there who don't have my same diet, I'll let Angela give a little bit more direct context as to what those meals look like.
Yeah, and before I dive into that, I'll just say my sister is gluten-free, and she, calls me every now and then, and she'll say, I can't believe I can't get the same quality of gluten-free food here in Baltimore when I could get that at 10,000 feet on Kilimanjaro. So they do some incredible things on the mountain. Food is really fuel. And so we want you to want to eat this food, especially if you are experiencing any, symptoms of altitude that might result in, losing your appetite. We want you to have foods that you are familiar with and comfortable eating. Everything that you'll be eating is going to be prepared using Western food safety standards. They're designed with a culinary chef. And it's really incredible. For breakfast, you're getting eggs made to order. You're getting crepes, lots of porridge, fruits, bacon, sausages. For dinner, there's always going to be a soup. I had a delicious steak, fried chicken, lasagna on the mountain. And then my favorite, there's always going to be a dessert. What a treat to have something like an apple crisp on the mountain. We had this amazing passion fruit custard. I've had colleagues who've had ice cream on the
We
mountain.
had pineapple flambe.
Oh my gosh. So the food, again, it's incredible. It's one of the things that we hear from guests is, just unexpected, and just such a treat, especially when you're, in these conditions away from home and your comfort zone. We'll have to recreate some of those soups very soon here.
All right, you guys are making me hungry. I don't know about everybody else. Next question here. How cold is it going to be at night?
That's a great question. So the temperatures can vary quite a bit. We had a night when we were down in the rainforest when it was probably a comfortable, 60 degrees. And then, in some cases, when you're closer to the summit, at your base camp, it might drop down to 0 degrees. So again, that packing list is preparing you for all sorts of temperatures. In most cases, trekkers are going to be wearing several layers to go to bed. You also have several layers of insulation, starting with that ground pad, your sleeping pad, a 0 degree rated sleeping bag. And then we also have some lovely ways to keep you warm in the evening. So before you head to bed, the porters will ask if you want your water bottles filled with boiling hot water, and you can take that water bottle and put it at the bottom of your sleeping bag, and it just creates the coziest little environment in your tent. On some of the coldest nights, I took those water bottles and I actually put them in my hiking shoes and my hiking boots. And in the morning, they were nice and cozy and ready for me to start the day. So it does get chilly up there, but we want to make sure that you are as comfortable as possible. So the packing list and all of the gear is going to help get us there.
Perfect. Okay, this one keeps coming up a lot. Can you talk a little bit about the different seasons? When is the best time to climb? What should be avoided?
Yeah, I'll snag that one. Again, I'm just gonna keep taking the easy ones. But the convenient thing from a planning standpoint on Kilimanjaro is that Tanzania is 3 degrees south of the equator, right? The seasonal variation between the hottest time of year and the coldest time of year is the difference of 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So you really don't need to agonize about when's an appropriate time. The mountain is going to be just as kind or the opposite no matter when you go. You can't really predict what the weather patterns are going to be when you get above that tree line and the clouds are rolling in. The one obvious exception to that would be April. April brings the heavy rain, so we won't be deploying our Kilimanjaro treks at that time. But outside of that, there's very little restriction as far as when you can go. So I tell people, hey, choose a time that makes your life easier and gives you adequate time to prepare. I mean, you could get ready. Most folks with a reasonable level of fitness could prepare for a Kilimanjaro trek in about 3 or 4 months. We often see people planning this about 8 months or a year in advance. But just choose a time that makes your life easy. And then on top of that, if you are doing safari, and I hope you are, this is the naturalist coming out of me again, then talk to us about the nuances of the animal viewing, because that can have a slightly tailored experience, whether you want to experience calving season in the early part of the year, or maybe see a river crossing in the summer or the fall, or the rut in between, or anything in between there. So talk to us about planning. We'll give you a little bit of context there. But the bottom line is you can go any time of year outside April.
Thanks, Lewis. All right. We also have a lot of folks wondering about vaccinations and Diamox. Can you share a little bit about what is required and should everyone take Diamox?
I can take that one. So nothing is required for travel to Tanzania in terms of vaccinations. Unless you're coming from a yellow fever endemic country, then the yellow fever vaccination is required. But outside of that, nothing's required. We do recommend that every trekker visit a travel doctor or a travel clinic and talk about any precautions that they should be taking, Diamox is a big one, especially since you are doing a high altitude trek. Diamox or any other altitude sickness medication. I would say that most of our trekkers at least ask their doctors about it. Everyone on my trek took Diamox, and the Thompson team, they're looking at any way to prevent altitude sickness from coming up in the first place, and Diamox is oftentimes, one of those medications that can help with that. But definitely talk with a travel doctor to make sure that's, the right precaution for you. And then any other, travel medicine that you want to look into, precautions to take will be good to discuss with them as well.
Thank you, Angela. Okay, we also have a lot of inquiries about charging devices. There's so many great pictures of Kilimanjaro, but how are those being captured if there's nowhere to plug in?
Yeah, and please elaborate if I miss anything. I'm mostly going to speak from my own personal experience. I mean, part of the appeal to me when you're doing this trip unlike any other is this ability to unplug. Not having cell phone signal and Wi-Fi, just it allowed us to really see the task at hand and burned its memory into all of our brains on the trip. But that being said, you still want to document some of this. I did bring my phone. My girlfriend brought her phone, and we were careful about when we wanted to use it because we wanted to be present in the moment. But every once in a while, you just get hit with one of those sunrises, and you got to go home and show people. So what we brought was actually a power bank that I got on the advice of my colleagues here at work, and we'll talk to you about what would be right for you. So ours was for 2 people, so it had a little bit of weight to it, probably even over a pound, something like that. But that was enough for us to routinely charge our phones in throughout the trip, and so we were able to take video and come back with photos when we got down to the bottom. We tried to keep it warm, keep it near our person, so that the cold weather wouldn't, with the lithium batteries, reduce its ability to keep charging. Some folks I've heard ask me about using solar powered chargers. It's generally not a great idea. Just as you can imagine, on a mountain, it's going to be very cloudy. It's probably even going to be rainy. And the odds that over in the brief pockets of sunlight that you have from getting into camp before you leave the next morning is going to enough to meaningfully justify you bringing it with you is pretty slim. It's the technology, everything's getting smaller and lighter. So when you're ready to plan your trip and we're actually getting close to actually putting things in bags, talk to us, talk to Angela, and find out what a good solution might be to charge up.
Perfect. All right, we're getting towards the end here, but we'll take a couple more. Can we leave a bag for clothes somewhere while they're on the mountain?
Yes, I can take that one. Absolutely. You do have a weight allowance on Kilimanjaro. Lewis mentioned the porters are only allowed to carry up to 33 pounds. And you're probably going to have a little more than that as you have your travel clothing, or if you've spent some time in Tanzania before or after your trek, you'll probably have a few extra articles of clothing and gear. So you'll keep all your bags with you up until you get to the mountain gate. And then Thompson does offer to take any extra bags to the Thompson office in a ruchette, store those securely while you're trekking. And then once you're off the mountain, if you're heading to safari, you can swap those bags out. So yeah, not a problem. I would say most trekkers are storing an extra bag, with any of their travel gear.
Perfect. Okay. And are you guys able to share anything more about the Barranco Wall? Is there anything special that everyone needs to do to prepare for tackling that?
Oh gosh, I would say it's something that you should look forward to, not be apprehensive about. There are going to be moments, whereas most of this trek is just one foot in front of the other at a pretty consistent angle. The Barranco Wall does diverge from the norm in that way. You will have points where you'll need 3 points of contact, steadying yourself with a hand, taking a step. But also keep in mind, the furthest you're falling is onto the guide who's helping you up. And so you're not going to be at any risk. They've done this hundreds and hundreds of times. It's exhilarating. It's beautiful. There's a little bit of a ritual where you kiss the rock as you're making your way through. Barranco, but please don't be intimidated. See it as something that's going to be a fun way to mix things up on an otherwise pretty conventional hike. It was an absolute blast, and if you call in, talk to me, I'll show you some videos of us doing it. I mean, folks, it's funny. We had folks ages 19 to 65, and everybody was just laughing their way through the whole thing. So yeah, definitely something to be excited about.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. I think there's a lot of media out there that makes it a little more dramatic than it actually is, a little more intimidating. And my sister who trekked with me had seen a lot of those and was feeling really nervous for the Bronco Wall. Once we finished, she said, "This has been the best day so far. We had so much fun. It's not as intimidating, and as Lewis mentioned, there's someone there telling you all the handholds, all the footholds, right behind you." And another great thing about our treks and the Thompson guides is that they're typically finding a time when you're not going to have, a line of people behind you or a line of people ahead of you. So you can take your time really enjoying that wall and, spending that time figuring out the footholds and the handholds. But it really is a lot of fun. And I think besides summit day, probably our favorite day on the mountain.
Yeah, I would agree. And the last thing I'd add is, and if you know yourself and you know that you still don't want to do the Barranco Wall, that doesn't count you out from climbing Kilimanjaro. Just talk to us about the Grand Traverse route, and we can set you up.
Perfect. Okay, we are getting towards the end of our time here, so I think this may be our last question. Can you share how many hours per day you're typically trekking and what is happening when you're not trekking?
Sure, I can jump in.
Sure.
Yeah. So depending on which route you're on, this is going to vary, but the Western approach, which Lewis and I both did, the number of trekking hours is very reasonable. On some days, you might be trekking for 3 hours. On some days, it might be 5 or 6 hours. Your summit day is going to be the longest. I think we were on trail going up and down for maybe 12 or 13 hours. I don't know how long your day was, but that's going to be the longest day. Everything else, again, pretty reasonable. So, you're getting up early, but it's not too early besides that summit day, but you have time to have a sit down breakfast, have coffee in your tent, get everything ready to head out. And then most groups are back at camp, just before lunchtime, or you might take lunch on the trail and get back to camp, in the early afternoon. And then you have time. Honestly, I napped quite a bit, any time that I had, but we also had a really great group. We used that time to get to know each other, share stories. One of the days we did a yoga stretch session. Some people, played cards, read books. I don't know what you did back at camp.
Yeah. I mean, I watched Andor season 2 is what I did a lot of, but no, I mean, remember that this is not wasted time. This is all built by design. You have to acclimate. If we did it all faster, if you kept trekking, we would see those percentage summit success numbers start to go down.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a beautiful time where you don't have this technology, where you're looking at some of the most incredible natural vistas that you've ever seen in your life. I started sketching like I knew what I was doing. You'll discover things. So there's plenty of ways to entertain yourself. You're talking either with the new friends that you've made or with loved ones that you brought on this trip. You're getting to talk to the porters and the guides, get a little more dimensionality in the trip. But no, that's definitely one of the portions of the trip that I think doesn't get as much fanfare because it isn't the active trekking part, but just taking it all in and resting after a long, well-deserved day is definitely something that I can remember very well.
Some of that time is also spent eating and fueling up for the next day. So in addition to dinner time, you also have tea time before that, where you can, get your tea, your popcorn, your trail mix. Again, sharing stories with everybody, but also that's when you're checking in with your guide and doing all of those, heart rate checks and pulse ox checks. So it goes by, it does sound like a lot of time at camp, but it's as Lewis mentioned, time to rest and, get to know everyone around you. You're not talking to fellow trekkers. You're definitely talking with the guides and the porters as well.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. We do have a lot of questions that we weren't able to get to today. So I do want to encourage everyone to either shoot us an email or give us a call. Anyone here on the Thompson team will be happy to jump in and help answer anything that we didn't get to today.
Great. Thank you so much, Carolyn. And thank you, Louis. And thank you to all of you. Hopefully we'll see all of you on the roof of Africa sometime soon.
Yeah, give us a call. Thank you.